thanks, Kimberley, for joining Architect Tomorrow. You've been
My pleasure.
involved actually in Architect Tomorrow for some time, kind of behind the scenes. Thank you for sort of pointing good speakers my way.
Oh, of course, my pleasure.
But what I really wanted to do is get your story on the community, shared with the community. Talk to me about what your journey into technology looked like.
So I've been in male-dominated industries since I was 19. I went to university taking business and I didn't like it. I much preferred working. So I started working full-time and was working in transportation and logistics. Started off as office administrator, moved into office manager, inside sales, and then moved from Edmonton to the big city of Vancouver. And I was 24 at the time. And I stayed working in logistics and transportation. So obviously very male dominated industry. And then was in a meeting one time, and where you would go meet your customers, because you were essentially going to sell them shipping, transportation, and international warehousing and distribution services. You'd go meet them in their shipping facilities, in their warehouse on the dock, and behind you is screaming forklifts and it smells like propane, and not the ideal place that I wanted to work every single day. So the turning moment for me was sitting in an office with a client, and you're sitting on one of those dirty chairs that has the casters, like the wheels on the bottom. One of the wheels fell off, and I think the wheel had already been broken off and they'd plunked it back on a few times. I ended up falling out of the chair onto the floor with my book and papers everywhere. And that was in the olden days when you had papers. So that was the moment I thought, I don't like this. I need to try something different. So I had reached out to a recruiter, and I'd never worked with a recruiter before. And he said, "Hey, what do you think of telecom?" And Google wasn't a thing then in the olden days. So it's not like I could Google telecom. I'm like, well, I don't know. What is it? And he's like, well, it's like a phone company. I'm like, okay. And I couldn't understand what that meant. I thought this was me selling phone services to people at home. He said, no. He's like, this is a business corporate job. You actually sell voice and data services to companies. So that was my first entry into technology. I started working with Bell. Bell is a huge telecom now technology organization within Canada. I was working with them for 3 years, and that was my entrance into technology. I learned a ton. I went to Vancouver Community College to take a course on kind of the Telecom 101 to understand what this stuff was that I was selling. But ultimately, it came down to understanding what was going on with the customers, what was their project that they were working on. Were they moving? Were they just replacing old systems, what have you? So that's how I got into technology. And I've now been in that since 2000, so 21 years, and the time has absolutely flown by. Following that, I started working for TELUS, and another, you'd think of Canada's sort of big telecom peers, it's Bell and it's TELUS. So was then working with TELUS on the wireless side of the house, and then they merged wireline and wireless. So essentially, if you were selling anything, you were now selling everything. And that was my I guess a big awakening to really understand how much more there was out there. So I was selling contact center services. I was selling data center services, security consulting services. And that was a big education for me and fantastic company to work for. And what wound up being sort of that entrance into technology was such a huge confidence builder, but also a huge network builder and a skill builder. And I think one of the things that a lot of people forget is once you're within an organization, the amount of training and education and the learning opportunities that you have, especially within big organizations, is ultimately limitless. So I am thankful I've gotten into technology, and many people that I talk to about careers, I always encourage them to look at technology when you think of why that's relevant and why that's important. Unless you're selling fish off of a cart on the beach for cash, you are a technology company. So it's just so incredibly relevant, and it's going to just become even more prominent in every single business in our daily lives in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing your story. And it's interesting to hear that the wheels literally came off at one point, and that was what made you perhaps made you rethink the choices. And the other thing that leaps out to me is allowing people to, make a career change or make a step in a different direction, right? And so often I think people are, looking for people that are exactly what they need, forgetting actually you should take the raw ingredients of someone and make them into the person you need them to be. And there's a lot of lazy recruiting that goes on. I see it all the time. Like, need all this experience. I mean, I know it goes around LinkedIn all the time, doesn't it? These job specs that no one could ever meet, and it's an entry level role or something like that. But no, really interesting sort of here. And where in that sort of, the last 20 years, when did sort of security or the IT ops or IT risk sort of side of things, when did that leap out at you as a thing? Did that sort of naturally sort of happen? Did you just sort of go, oh, I realize I'm now kind of covering security as well, or was there a real kind of moment? Was there a wheels falling off kind of story there? Or not?
There's a story. I don't know that it's a wheels falling off story, but it was when I was with TELUS and I'd been doing the same job as an account executive. I think it was about 5 years at that point. Yeah. I had won President's Club 2 times. I was looking for something different. I was looking for a new challenge. I felt that I could do the job that I was doing, and sure, I could continue to do that forever, but I really wanted to do something different. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to have different conversations. And it was quite funny because I was an account manager. So we would be call it the lead strategist on the account team. Mm-hmm. And when we would start talking to the customer about different business objectives or challenges or problems, we would then start to recognize like, oh, hey, I think my contact center team could help, or my security team, or whatever team, finance, health team behind you. And I started learning a little bit more about our security team. And I thought I knew more than I did. So it was quite funny because the director at the time, a gentleman by the name of Con Nickel, he was the director of the security team for the West, and he was recruiting. He had 2 open spots. And he was recruiting and trying to find somebody. So I was thinking, okay, I can help. And I don't know why, but I've always had this huge passion of trying to help people find jobs and connect people. And I still do that to this day. But I thought, okay, I can help them find somebody for this job. And I sent a few people to him. And then as I was reading the job description, I'm like, wait a minute, what about me? So then I texted him and I said, hey, what about me? He goes, what about you? What? I go, what about me for that security role? He goes, well, why not? He goes, let's have a chat. So he took a huge chance on me. I had obviously built a brand and reputation. So he saw something in me as a candidate that he was willing to bet on. And not only did he take a chance on me, I came into the role thinking I knew 25% of what I needed. And boy, was I surprised. I finally got into that role and realized I knew about 5% of what I needed to. I didn't realize how massive the cybersecurity, privacy risk, governance, compliance threat. I didn't realize how big that field was. I didn't realize how many different focus areas there were. I didn't realize how many technology solutions there were. I didn't know, I didn't know anything about security frameworks. Like when you think of NIST or what have you, I didn't know that that was a thing. I didn't know that that was the methodology behind how decisions are made, how risk is identified, and how really cybersecurity is about managing risk. And the cybersecurity teams are often there just as a doctor is to give you advice. Maybe you don't follow the advice, or just as a lawyer is there to give you or the business advice. And, the business may choose to accept that risk. So thankfully he took the chance on me and I loved it. I felt like I finally knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. And what really got me thinking about security as a long-term career option is at TELUS Garden, which is their headquarters in Vancouver. We had Ralph Goodale, who was Canada's former federal safety minister, come in and speak to us at a customer hosting event. And one of the things he talked about was cybersecurity and how critical and relevant cybersecurity was going to be for Canadian business and citizens, and not obviously just Canada, but globally. Mm-hmm. And one of the reference points that he brought up was how the World Economic Forum ranks cybersecurity. So you think of them ranking it, that was 5 or 6 years ago, they were ranking it as one of the top 5 global risks. Well, it's never left one of the top 5 global risks. It's still up there. And in last year's report, they ranked it as a clear and present danger. And we see that every single day in the news. And I subscribe to all kinds of specialty cybersecurity news alerts, different Twitter feeds, etc. But then just the general news, you see every day there's cybersecurity breaches happening. The other point that he touched on was this global cybersecurity talent shortage. And at that time, it was roughly 2 million people. So, of course, I'm thinking job security. And although that's a bit of a goofy way to think about it, I wanted to pick something next in my career that I could do for the long term. So I see myself doing this for another 5, maybe 10 years. I love working. I don't anticipate that I'm ever going to completely stop working. And following my full-time job, I'm already doing like consulting, advisory and board work. So I want to continue doing that in the future. And maybe that turns into some type of a consulting engagement where I'm self-employed part-time. But where it sort of met my personal goals and personal values, I'm not sure if you've heard of this. It's a philosophy and a book called, and I think I'm going to pronounce it right. It's Ikigai, and it's the Japanese secret to a long, happy life. And
is this the overlapping sort of things? If you can find something you love, something you're good at, something you can get paid for. Is it that one?
Yes. And something the world needs. So that's the other thing.
Right.
So not only did I feel like, hey, I found out what I wanted to do when I grow up, that every time I talk about it, even now I'm getting goosebumps because I'm thinking like this finally happened. I didn't even know this was possible. So every morning I wake up, I'm excited to talk to my colleagues, my partners, my customers, to understand what their challenges are and how we can help them. So that's how I got into cybersecurity at TELUS. And then the one thing that I'm sure you've seen and we've all seen in cybersecurity, people get recruited and poached like crazy. The talent pool isn't just short on the technical side or the business side. It's also short on the sales side. So I was recruited to Checkpoint Software Technologies. I was there 8 months, fabulous company, fabulous experience. I got to go to Israel a couple of times, amazing team. And then I was recruited to Palo Alto Networks, equally fabulous company, a fabulous team, really enjoyed the experience. And then Tanium recruited me and I didn't know anything about Tanium. So circling back to touching on, when did you get into that sort of IT operations risk side of the house? That's where I loved the Tanium stories. Like I've been in IT 20 years and I've never seen anybody do what Tanium does. It's such a different, impactful experience and solution to a problem that every single business and every single company has. And it was different. It was an opportunity to build out the Western Canadian territory. So that's how did I get into it and how did I land here?
You talked partway through that about the kind of amount that people don't know, and I think that's honestly one of the big barriers to people getting into this. And I wonder if you'd have known like the percentage that you didn't know, how daunting that might have been. And I think a lot of people just get put off because it is a staggeringly complicated field.
Yes, I think that's part of it. So there's a resource that I share with almost every person that I talk to that's new coming into the field, or even that's looking to pivot within the field. And it's a resource by CyberSeek, and it's an interactive career pathway. So you actually click on it. Like if you start here, you could go here, or you could circle back here. Like it's very complex to understand what a typical career path looks like. And actually me even saying typical career path is wrong. There is no such thing as a typical career path in cybersecurity. And when I say cybersecurity, I'm using that as a broad, general, holistic term for risk, compliance, governance, everything. I don't know that I would have jumped into cybersecurity had I known that. I think I would have felt intimidated. I think I would have felt overwhelmed. I wouldn't have known where to start. And I think the advice I would give a lot of people is just get in somewhere. And I think once you're in, you start to recognize a couple things. You start to recognize potential career paths for yourself. You start to recognize what other people's paths might have been. There are no two that are the same. And you also learn what your passion is. So if you come into one area and maybe you are a security analyst, and then you start to learn about what your colleagues on the privacy team are doing, or the governance team. You're going to have your eyes open to what other opportunities are out there. And like a lot of the training and certifications that are required, back to that, the article we were referring to earlier, these entry level positions and these job postings and these requirements of the unicorn search for a security analyst, I think are really unrealistic. I've got friends that have come through, an interior designer, she's now in cybersecurity, a bank teller, she's now in cybersecurity. You look at some of the interesting career pathways, a lawyer that's now runs a forensics company. And if people start to focus on those transferable skills as leaders and as hiring managers, and they look for somebody that's passionate, and you talk to them about like, what does good look like for you? And
passion and potential, the two, whenever I hire, that's the two things that are like the starting foundations. Are they passionate about this thing? Do they have the potential to grow? Do they want to grow and learn? And those two things are intertwined, right? You need to be passionate and curious about something in order to show that potential. So no, I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that genuine sense of curiosity and that desire to learn. And the one thing too that I love about cybersecurity is you don't have to fit a specific mold. You can pivot once you're in the industry and say, I don't like that anymore. I want to try something different. And because there's such a massive talent shortage, there's often ways for you to get into other areas.
But the reality really is that no one knows everything. It's simply not possible. I mean, there are people with more experience in different areas, and maybe some people, as you say, have jumped through those different roles and have seen things from different perspectives. I think a lot of it is just having seen things through different perspectives is the main difference. Someone doesn't know the A to Z of cyber or even IT because it's just not possible. Yeah. But I suppose they have the confidence because they can pattern match a bit more. They can say, okay, that situation feels a bit like the situation we had a few years ago, or have you, just a slightly different flavor of it. So I think that's, and like you say, you just need to get in, don't you? And then you find your way, find a good sort of coach, mentor, someone who can kind of help you open your eyes to the things you don't know, but perhaps you think you do, and go from there.